Hey everyone, it's Dr. Zora here and welcome to another SkillCapped guide. Today we're going to be reviewing the 5 most common mistakes that many players make on defense. We have looked at some of the top pros currently playing Valorant to show that even the best of the best can make mistakes at times. However, we can all learn from them to improve certain plays to get better at the game. We're going to review a recent match between T1 and Envy to show you some of the mistakes that both teams made on defense. These mistakes resulted in this game unnecessarily going into overtime and lasting much longer than it should have. By the end of this guide, you'll have learned tips and tricks on how to fix these mistakes, the right way to play certain situations, and tactics that will allow you to play out rounds more cleanly on the defender side. But before we get into that, we're excited to announce our brand new hyper improved platform specifically designed to help you improve fast. At SkillCapped.com, you'll finally learn how to level up your aim, different techniques to win gunfights, and so much more. We have professional courses on every single agent, map, and mechanic in Valorant. This is backed up by the top pros, players, and coaches to make sure you are getting the most up-to-date and accurate information possible. In fact, we're so confident that you'll improve using our system that we offer a rank improvement guarantee. Check it out yourself in the link below. Simply put in what rank you're currently at and find out what rank you're guaranteed by using our system. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your true potential and get the rank you've always wanted at SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Alright, enough with the hype, let's jump right into the video. Coming in first, one of the biggest mistakes that players will make on defense is not using their abilities when they should. We've mentioned this before in our previous video on attacker side mistakes, but this is just as important to understand on the defender side. Abilities have multiple different scenarios in which they should be used for, and identifying these scenarios will allow you to use your agents to their fullest potential. Using abilities well is what differentiates a good defense versus a bad defense. In fact, at the lower ranks, you usually won't see many abilities being used at all on defense, which is why many of these players will complain about how difficult it is to play defense when in reality, usually the attacker side is much more difficult. If you use abilities efficiently, you'll find yourself having much more success at winning defender side rounds. In this first example, we have a skirmish that occurs between T1 and Envy in Heaven. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and then Cypher uses his cage to slow down the push, and then Raze uses a satchel to assist it. Looks good so far, but if we look at what abilities Raze still has, she still has her Boombot. This would have been a very good ability to place as both sides have their vision obscured. The Boombot would have helped to get a clear idea of what's going on in mailroom and could have allowed for another potential kill through the cyber cage, as the Boombot is very hard to destroy with pistols. Instead, Food doesn't end up using the Boombot and just backs away from Heaven, which is the right play given that Cypher Cage blocks both vision as well, and once that Cyber Cage goes down, it's unclear how many players are still close mail that could overwhelm him afterwards. The issue that occurs is that this gives Envy a lot of map control, in which they then split over into A and actually have time to wall off the B rotation as well while they're going through it. You can see that by not using this ability and giving away this map control, Envy was able to easily take over A, when they could have potentially delayed the push further and even get a kill and man advantage to improve their chances of winning the round. Coming in next, the second most common mistake that players will make on defense is not reacting to plays that the attackers are trying to make. This mistake comes in 2 variations. One is when defenders end up making moves or using abilities unnecessarily. For example, a common move that Sage players or players using agents with smokes will do is using their abilities at the very beginning of the round. Many players will end up smoking off or walling off important choke points of the map without any information. They would smoke off or wall off areas such as A short on bind and middle on split, which sounds good initially, but it may not be a reactive play to what the attackers are doing. If the attacker side is nowhere close to these choke points and you haven't really learned the enemy's habits yet, these abilities may potentially be wasted, which leaves you with less utility to stall out a push later in the round. This was something I saw particularly prior to Sage's nerf. Wasting a Sage wall in an area that the attackers don't end up going to is very costly when it could have been saved up for another area that you do hear the attackers actually pushing. The second variation of this mistake is not reacting to a play at all. If you are holding a choke point and do actually hear attackers coming by or throwing abilities at you, that is when you actually want to throw something back to slow off the push. If you don't end up doing this, playing defender side becomes very difficult and you can be easily overwhelmed. To give you an example, we're going to go back to the Envy vs T1 matchup. At the start of this round, T1 goes pretty deep into mid, in which Jett ends up in the corner of Male. What ends up happening is that Envy is aware of a player potentially being there and begins to shoot and throw abilities at that location. Jett is now in a lot of trouble and needs assistance to get away. To react to the pressure that Envy was giving, there should have been a smoke or blind thrown in middle from Omen or Jett to allow for a safe escape. Instead, nothing is done to react to the attacker's play, and Jett ends up taking 2 satchels from Raze before she herself has to dash away and then throw a smoke on her own. This lack of reactive play resulted in Jett going down to a very low health and mid control being completely given away. The attackers now have a very good chance of performing a split push and winning the round. Had there been reactory smokes or blinds used to contest mid, the situation of the round could have been very different. Going into our third most common mistake on defender side, not investing enough resources to contest important areas of the map. In each map, there are areas and choke points that are extremely important to keep control of on defense to ensure the attackers don't have an easy time of pushing onto a site. For example, middle is usually an area of each map that you want to keep in check. This is because if attackers get control of middle, they usually have more opportunities to split push onto a site. Versus if they don't have middle, they have to attack the site from one angle in which the multiple defenders can focus on that one spot and have a better chance of dealing with the attackers. A big example of this is on split. If attackers don't get control of mid, they're forced to push through from one narrow choke point such as B garage and A main. Every defender can then focus on this one point and have a good chance to keep the site in check. However, if middle is taken over by the attackers, they can then split onto B from heaven and B garage or split onto A from A main and vents. To show this in a real game, we have T1 playing on the defender side. They choose a setup where one person is on B, one person is on mid, and 3 players are on A. With this positioning, mid can be very easily taken over by Envy, which would open up the split push that we just mentioned. Now, it is important to note that there is a Cypher tripwire at vent ropes, so if Envy was to split push into A, T1 setup would be good to defend against it. However, if the enemies pick off the mid player and push through heaven and go on to B, there would only be one defender there, and the attackers will have a very easy time hitting that site. If we play out the clip, AZK gets immediately picked, and just like that, middle control is given up to the attackers. Now, we just said that the T1 A setup is good, but with AZK going down, T1 has to respect that they could go B and overwhelm it. This results in some of the A players leaving to go into B in case the attackers go there. Obviously, T1 doesn't know what Envy is doing, so this rotation doesn't pan out well for them as they decide to go through vents to A, and now there's only one player there and Raze gets taken out and A is free for the taking. You can see that by not contesting the middle area on split, Envy has several options that they can pick to hit a site versus T1 who is scrambling to try to guess where the push may come from, and their defense crumbles as a result. So with this in mind, make sure that you put ample resources into those important areas on each map. Have 2 players defending middle and make sure these players have stalling abilities such as smokes, slows, grenades, or mollies to give the attackers a harder time of pushing through it. This will also help to run the clock down and put time pressure onto the enemies as well, which opens up the door for them to make mistakes that you can capitalize on. Moving on to our 4th most common mistake on defense, it is pushing too much. On the defender side, your role is usually to hold the choke point that you're positioned at. This is what you want to do 90% of the time. You play a good position to defend against the attackers, and you wait for the attackers to come to you, in which you react by throwing abilities and getting into favorable aim duels. A big mistake that players will do is rather than holding their site, they try to push to get a flank kill on enemies. It's a very tempting move to do, but it will usually backfire in the long run. Players may not expect it initially, but they will start to realize that you like to push, in which if you choose to do so again, you'll likely be met by multiple players and get easily eliminated. As a rule of thumb, the only time that you may want to push past your site or choke point is if you're at a man disadvantage. Having a number advantage on attacker side makes it much easier for them to successfully hit a site. So in this scenario, you may want to take a risky push that could potentially get you a kill or 2 to even the odds out, and then you back up and hold the site like you normally would. The other time you may want to push is if you have good information on where the enemy team is at and you know it's a highly safe play to make to get map control and help rotate your team accordingly to where the attackers are more likely to be at. In this clip we saw earlier, we actually see crashies from T1 pushing unnecessarily through the A site and onto the attacker spawn. The initial push to A is a pretty good play actually, as T1 had Raze push through as well with Showstopper, which greatly increases the odds of winning the battle if there were players from Envy there. The issue that arises is that once this push is done though, Raze backs up to A and crashies decides to continue pushing through attacker spawn. This push actually doesn't give any more information to the defenders. The attackers could easily go through sewers without him knowing and hit A. Especially with AZK going down and Omen already rotating to B, the better play would have been to stay close to sewers to defend that area and prevent a split push, or to go back to the site itself to help defend A. Instead, Raze is now left alone and gets overwhelmed by the A attack, and T1 now has very little control of the map. To give a more common example, we have T1 and Envy in a 4 vs 4 situation. There isn't a man advantage right now, so there isn't much reason to try to take a risky push for information. For some reason though, Crashies decides to push through B garage for intel, but ends up getting easily killed. With that extra pick, now the defenders have a man disadvantage and a much harder time of winning the round. T1 does end up holding onto this round due to some misplay from Envy, but things could have gone much smoother if the extra kill wasn't given away for free by T1. The same push happens later by Calypso on a very important overtime round. He tries to surprise the attackers by pushing through his own smoke, but again this is very risky, and if enemies are there, you're easily getting picked, and that's exactly what happened. Envy now has to play this round much more differently, and they actually push a second time onto garage to try to get some kills back. So the second push is good given their situation, but the first initial push by Calypso was bad, as there's a decent chance players are waiting for that potential smoke push, and it's an easy kill for attackers to take. Perhaps in lower ranks these plays may work out, but at the higher level many players are aware of this potential move and you'll be dead. Lastly, the fifth most common mistake players will make on defense is not trying to coordinate plays with your team. As Valorant is a team-based game, trying to play it in a coordinated fashion is highly recommended for success. You want to pick agents that are good but that also complement one another to really give your team a strong defense. For example, in this clip we have Raze and Sage defending middle and heaven. A potential defensive play that could have been done is using one of Sage's slow orbs to decrease enemy movement and then follow it up with a Raze grenade at that exact same location. This greatly improves the chances of the grenade dealing heavy damage onto the attackers, as they have less ability to run away from it. A combination play like this would work great at middle stairs, as the slow orb would cover that entire choke point and then attackers have nowhere to run from the Raze grenade. And instead, what ends up happening is Sage and Raze play out the round very passively at B rafters, so they give up middle for free, in which T1 could have gone for an A split push and easily won the round from there. Of course, T1 doesn't know what Envy's setup is, and they end up in a relatively good crossfire, giving Envy multiple kills to help win the round. Despite Envy winning the round though, a coordinated use of abilities would have given Envy a much easier time of winning this round versus just relying on a crossfire aim duel setup that they did later on. Again, this passive play and giving up middle could have easily led T1 to go for an A hit that would have been very likely to work out for them. Point being, make sure that you try to identify ways that you can use abilities from different agents together to enhance your defensive power. And remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Alright, so what mistakes do you notice yourself making on the defender side? Let us know in the comment section below so we can all learn from them. And while you're down there, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides just like this one with one goal in mind: helping you become a better player. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. I'm Dr. Zora, and good luck out there.